Hello, everyone, and welcome. Helps to be unmuted when you start talking. Uh, this is the 189th Governance and Risk Call. My name is Peyton. I go by Pros11 Online. I'm one of the governance facilitators here at MakerDAO. If you're joining us live or watching the recording, this is our weekly governance call where we talk about both what's happening in and around Maker, as well as potential risk items to the protocol. So do have a few ground rules for those of us that are joining live. Number one, as you might have noticed, the meeting is being recorded. So let's try not to speak over one another. Zoom allows us a few tools if you do want to enter in the conversation. It's really helpful for me as a moderator if you utilize the raised hand function. That way, while people are talking, I have kind of a speakers list forming on who I can call next. However, if you are unable to do so, you can always drop a comment in our chat, and I'm happy to read it out when we get over to it. All right, with that said, we do have a bit of an agenda to build off of today before we get to any open discussion. We'll start as usual with our governance roundup containing the votes, MIPs update, and our forum at a glance. Next, we have our initiative updates. This will be going over April financials and a governance cadence change. Then on to our main discussion of the day, where we'll be talking about governance improvements. And after all that, if there's still some time, like I said, we'll get to the open discussion.
Oh, sorry, I have to refresh the slide deck because I realized that people have made edits since I shared my screen, so give me just a second.
That is a good practice, good call. One downside, I guess, to working with collaborative systems, people can make edits, and if you don't hit refresh, they don't keep it on the screen. All right, thanks for that, David.
All yours.
So we'll go ahead and head into the governance roundup and the votes. All right, so on polls, we did have 2 weekly polls and 2 green light polls that concluded. All of which passed. I guess that is an easy summation. On the weekly polls, we had the investigate implementation of the 𝘪𝘓 D3M. So that was kind of that pseudo green light for looking into a new direct deposit module. I feel like I added, no, that's 3 Ds, we're good. All right, next we had our open market committee's proposal. They are the rates group that issues monthly recommendations. More on that on the next slide, I suppose. Our 2 concluded green lights are the State ETH 2 and Huntington Valley Bank green lights, both with a lot of support from the community. Statewide State ETH had 100% approval, and the Huntington Valley only had like 7% abstaining, but no votes. So definitely some excited on these potential new collaterals. And I wanted to call out 2 more ongoing green light polls. We have the ATD combustor and the India Power green bonds, both of which will be going up for vote and ending up on the 16th of May. So if you haven't expressed your opinion there, please consider doing so. And Josh asking about the 100 versus 0%. The State ETH2 had nothing but yes votes, and Huntington Valley did have 7% voting abstain, but neither with any opposition. Cool. So that brings us on to executive. Last week's executive distributing streams and die distributions to protocol engineering, GovComms, the events, core unit strategic happiness, and data insights. That was passed and executed. So all those groups should have their funding and their streams set up now. As a slight mistake in the executives, as we'll go over later, we are having a new cadence for our executives. So the proposal actually won't take place until next Wednesday. But the next bill will include recognized delegate payments, the parameter proposal rates change that I mentioned earlier. So that's going to include dropping to the wrapped Bitcoin vaults, both A and B there, as well as the wrapped stake ETH onboarding. Okay, before I get any more tongue tied, I better hand off the mic to someone else. believe it's going to be Pablo taking away with the MIPS.
Yep, that's right. Hello, everyone. Pablo here again with a new MIPS update. Next slide, please. Yep, so the formal summation window for May's governance cycle closed yesterday, and we've had 5 formal submissions. Let's take a look. So next slide, thank you. So we have MIP 65, Project 𝘧𝘪𝘴, and MIP 68, Monetarist Lusitano, both by Alan Peterson. Also MIP 69, L2-L1, Fast Withdrawals by Derek from Protocol Engineering. We have an ambitious amendment by ADCV that overhauls the core unit budget process, and also a budget request by Andrew for strategic happiness. Next slide, please. The ratification polls for these proposals will go up on Monday 9 and run for 2 weeks until Monday 23. As for proposals in RFC, there's 7 of them right now. We have a MIP 72, Delegated Collateral Attachment, Real World Assets Arranger Application. 6 is Capital by Matthew Rabinowitz. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. We have another quite ambitious amendment whose main objective is to improve the core unit onboarding process, and it's going to be updated in the forum pretty soon, so try to keep an eye on it. And next, we have an amendment to MIP 16, that is the weekly governance cycle on MIP. This amendment adjusts the governance cadence from executive proposals being posted on Friday to these being posted on Wednesday instead. We also have a facilitator onboarding for Joshua, also known as Psychonaut, that upon approval will promote him from deputy facilitator to a full facilitator for the Unified Security Core Unit. In the same line, also we have a voluntary facilitator onboarding from Data Insights, Tomasz, I hope I'm pronouncing that right too, who hopes to be succeeded by Tadeo, for whom we have a facilitator onboarding proposal. And finally, we have a special purpose fund request to experiment with various yield generating strategies. And next slide, please. Finally, if you plan on having your proposal entering the upcoming June's governance cycle, please have it posted in the forum by Wednesday 11 at the latest. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Pablo, and definitely recommend checking out those weekly updates if you want more info on the status of the current MIPS. Cool. That'll take us to our forum updates, and I see Artem ready to go on those. Take it away.
Yep, posting the link. And happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the GNR Forum Recap. Quickly reviewing top announcements, discussions, news, and signal requests. And we'll be going over the week of April 28th to May 4th. And beginning with our announcements, first up, we have Success Capital, who is hosting their first annual gala charity dinner on May 28th in Seville, Spain. Its mission is to advance the professionalization of onboarding real-world assets within MakerDAO community and raise funds for global medical research. So if you're interested, join the Telegram channel for more information, which is available in the post. And next up, the retrieval of 3,800 ETH from the surplus buffer by the X content production core unit multisig will
Sorry
not
to interrupt you, Artem.
Yes.
It's not ETH, it's DAI.
Oh, DAI? Oh, thanks.
It's $3,800.
Oh,
yeah.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, that's a big difference. So the retrieval of 3,800 DAI from the surplus buffer from the X content production core unit multisig will not be included in an executive spell. This is due to the complexity of achieving it safely and cost effectively. There's some more information. You could check out the post if you want to get some details behind this decision. Yeah, that's true. Would be worth the expense. All right. Next up, we have the DAI Foundation, who has released details with improvements to the process for asset registry content managers to request changes to an asset. It's a bit more streamlined, and if you're interested, check out the post for more information on getting involved. And next up, this one isn't on the forum at a glance, but it's important to mention on the call. PE and GovAlpha have been discussing adjusting the governance cadence for executive proposals. Currently, executives are posted on Friday, but the new Cadence will have executives posted on Wednesday. There's more information available in the post, but Derek will be live in a few minutes on this call to explain and discuss on this improvement. And now moving on to our top discussions. Optimism has recently announced an update to their new governance model. And in response, Matt NZ shared his thoughts on what we might be able to learn from this update to apply towards maker governance. And a quick side note, check out the Optimism Collective website. It's amazingly designed. I like it. Next up, we have Mamum. Following up with his previous post that was discussing the need to develop a strategic plan focused on audiences. This time, he illuminates the need for internal alignment for Maker as a whole, and that core units should have a unified purpose for the protocol. Mamum exhibits some visual ideas, such as an operational map focused on promoting collaboration and proactivity, and a couple of other maps. So check out the post and drop some feedback. And for our final discussion, which is around some macroeconomic correlations, Metternich asked for a clarification on how rate hikes and rising bond yields on the treasury market could impact DAI. And JCut quickly jumped in and provided a thorough answer, saying, in short, that DAI is less affected by shifting stablecoin liquidity because it is partially pegged to the dollar. And now moving on to our signal requests over the last week. There are currently 3 active signals going on. And first up, the rate limiting flapper only allows to kick off a new auction if it does not increase the total DAI in auction above a threshold called the lit, unless it's at the same value as the lot size. And currently the value for the lit is set for 150,000 DAI and can run up to 5 flap auctions at once. The lot size is, however, set to 30,000 DAI. And 𝘱𝘰 currently believes that there's no strong reason to burn this much MKR. And he proposes to set the lid to the same value as the lot size, which is 30,000, essentially a 1-to-1 lid to bump ratio, to ensure that there can only be one parallel flap auction running at a given time. In sacrifice, however, we will limit the maximum amount of MKR burnt per day from 7 million DAI to 1.5 million DAI. And the vote will run until May 13th. It's currently sitting at a winning option of yes at 68%. Next up, we have Sebastian, who moves forward on the balance sheet approach towards an aggressive growth strategy by asking the community whether we want to allocate some of the balance sheet to ETH. Additionally, he asks how much do we want to, well, the previous signal asked how much we want to, but it's been updated. Now it's just asking whether we do want to allocate to ETH. Sebastian presents the pros and cons that come of this action. And he notes that the signal request is aimed to gauge community desire and sentiment to begin working on this topic. Currently, no priority is attributed, and in a formal implementation will have to go through the governance process to continue. The vote will run until May 19th. And as of right now, the voting results are better than last week, with 38% supporting and 30% voting to not take action. And next up, our final signal request is submitted by Andrew Bourbon with the help of the risk team, who asks to reactivate MKR burn. He states that shutting down the burn also shuts down our only revenue distribution model, and that we have yet to replace it with something better. These actions have caused some stakeholders to lose faith in our ability to deliver. And our community and stakeholders are very important to us, and there's a possibility that we're risking their confidence in us if we do not continue to burn MKR at such low prices. In conclusion, Andrew asks whether we want to restart the burn with a reduced lid parameter to mitigate certain inefficiencies. And the vote will run until May 14th. As of right now, the vote results are equally mixed, with 39% supporting and 40% voting to do nothing.
And just for the recording, the risk team actually didn't partner with Andrew on this post. Quick correction.
Oh, I thought it was written in there that they
that was
suggested something.
I read that some parameter somewhere and just quoted it, but it wasn't actually suggested.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Take that back.
My idea, I picked a almost like a random surplus buffer. I mean, but like I just think we should be burning at some rate. So maybe the parameter I picked is wrong, but no input from risk team. So just my own idea.
Yeah, I get it. You had to put an actionable step. All right. Well, that was the last signal request. For more stuff, check out the actual written version. It's a lot more comprehensive. It includes some more discussions, a 3-point summary, ongoing initiatives, and help wanted. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Artem. Always fun going these calls live, but appreciate all the effort you do putting those updates together. And speaking of updates, that does bring us to our initiative updates. All right, first, I believe we have strategic finance. I think you, Mark.
Yep, I'll kick things off. So, hey everyone, this is AES from Forums, facilitator at Strategic Finance Core Unit. Next slide. Just brief legal disclaimer before we kick things off. This report is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, regulatory, or tax advice. Next slide, please. So the protocol earned 7.7 million in revenue last month, a 29% increase from prior month and 39% decrease from prior year. Last April was an extremely bullish period, if you guys remember, with 𝘰𝘯𝘴 rates at 5.5% for the entire month. Our DAI supply from risk-weighted assets ended the month about 500 million lower than at this time last year. So we ended the month at 3.3 million and risk-weighted assets versus 3.8 million last year. On-chain workforce expenses decreased 28% from last month, and Oracle gas expenses increased by 26%. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the waterfall for the month-to-month walk, we had recurring net protocol income increased by 0.7 million from March, driven more than entirely by 0.9 million in fewer workforce expenses. We had lower lending yields, which were mostly offset by an increase in assets. On a quarter-over-quarter basis, we saw a significant lending yield and asset compression, with average risk-weighted assets used to mint DAI decreasing from 5.4 billion to 3.6 billion, and average loan yield decreasing 78 basis points from 2.69% to 1.91%. Next slide, please. For lending income, we had 5.8 million in revenue, which was a 100K decrease from prior month, which is about 2%. Our ETH dependency increased, driven by WBTC loan reductions, which the MOMC recommended cutting our WBTC-A rates from 3.25 to 2.25%, and WBTC-B rates from 4.5% to 4%, which would hopefully reverse these trends and start to diversify our loan portfolio a little further. Next slide, please. Over to Seb.
Yeah, so on the balance sheet side, you can see that our assets are decreasing mainly due to the PSM that is unwinding, and that is due to a lower demand of DAI in the market. Demand of DAI. And that's driven by two main factors. One, which is the curve. The DAI curve is decreasing. Still not the big outflow that we might see with the 4 pool, but we will see how it evolves. And Avalanche, a lot of DAI were on Avalanche and are coming back to mainnets to sadly be swapped to something else. But our crypto loan book is still increasing a little bit, so that's at least something of safety. We are still at 57% of stablecoin, so we are still quite good on the liquidity front. Next slide, please. On the risk part, it's getting better because we have less asset on our balance sheet. So the risk, the leverage ratio, which is equity divided by assets, is getting better, but not for the good reason, because you want to grow and not to shrink. And same thing more or less for the capitalization ratio, which is just using the yield-bearing asset. So if you look on the long term, it's quite stable, and we are just just fine. Still lower than what we should expect to be more safe, but still not in a very different situation than the last year. Next slide, please. And it will be for Adrian.
Hi. So just going over the ETH market share, I think the trend year on year is largely one of a contracting or slightly contracting ETH lending market. But here the narrative is punctuated with a positive month-on-month development with a sudden bump in vault capacities both on Aave and Maker has largely tracked with the overall growth of the market in that regard. However, here I think the key piece of information that we would call out is just the overall tendency for ETH to migrate out of the lending market. Aave taking share at Maker's and Compound's expense quite aggressively. And what remains to be seen is also going to be the impact of broader adoption of staked ETH alternatives on overall ETH as a source of collateral for lending. On the next slide, we go over WBTC. So here there was an unfortunate move where Maker went down to number 3 from number 1 in one single move from Nexo. That being said, the overall WBTC market is looking rather positive, and the supply of WBTC is increasing at a steady pace year on year. But here Aave takes the crown for the amount of BTC they've been able to capture and their positive trend on a month basis. The legend long is just under the chart. So Maker in green, Compound in red, Aave in purple. I'll make it bigger next time. Next slide. So we wanted to finish the discussion with 2 charts on level 2s, Arbitrum and Optimism. Here, I think last time we talked about it in the context of the Stargate launch, where so members of the team, of the protocol engineering team, of the growth team have engaged with Stargate, and you know, they may be able to speak to that and to how that process is evolving. Here, the only thing that I would call out is from January to April, Frax has emerged as a decently strong contender for 3rd place. It's still a market where USDC and USDT unfortunately just dominate the stablecoin landscape. But I think on the forums, there's a lot of talk about, you know, the North Star being organic DAI demand. And I think this chart should serve as an explanation for why organic DAI demand is important for growing the business. And it would be a shame to see Frax flip us basically on Arbitrum. On the next page. Then on the next page here on Optimism, the narrative started off quite positive for DAI, but has since evolved quite rapidly in the space of a few months for USD to take the lion's share of Optimism volume and Liquidity as a new contender, probably as a result of its increased adoption on protocols such as Synthetics and others. So here, once again, to call out the importance of being able to supply new protocols with a lot of organic DAI demand upfront, so that DAI has a utility beyond just being a receipt for a loan. This is fundamental to the collateralized crypto lending business. And you know, level 2s are tracking the overall crypto market, but are clearly where the retail market is going to be in the future. And it's something that we need to keep our attention on and our energy on to focus getting organic DAI demand back up. On the next slide. Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, right. I think that might be it. Yeah, there's only 11 slides.
Okay, that's great. There's more bad news in other slides, but we can talk to that if people have any specific questions. We chose to select the best bad news for this call.
Sorry about the things.
Sure.
I want to say that I don't think it's bad news because we already knew that. Like Maker is not yet on any layer 2 or any other chain. It's just on mainnet. So it's pretty difficult for like anyone to use DAI without having maker vaults in there. Like, of course, like you could say, but how USDC is managing it, because all market makers have USDC, and whenever, like this is something that we have been saying since the beginning. When we talk with a project on, let's say, optimism, it's easy to integrate with USDC because of liquidity. So they just integrate with USDC, and because of that reason, USDC liquidity increases. Also, all rewards and incentives on side chains and other networks are to increase stablecoins usage, but most of them are for USDC. In the case of Prax, they are putting a lot of money on rewards. Same with USD. So if we don't do anything, like this is going to be the situation. Like when we have maker vaults on Optimism, on Arbitrum, it will be so easy for us to increase DAI liquidity, because we could have D3M, we could have 𝘰𝘰𝘮, and that will solve, at least at the beginning, the liquidity problem that we have there. Also, if we manage to give loans to market makers through Maple and TrueFi, that will also help to increase DAI liquidity. But if not, it is like, why someone will use DAI instead other stablecoin with the low liquidity that it has currently, and without any rewards incentivizing the usage. It's like, yeah, DAI is decentralized, but that's not a feature yet. Like, I think it will be a feature in the future, but for now it's not. For now, people are looking the yield and the rewards.
Thanks, Nadia. Was there anything else we wanted to highlight from strategic finance there? I alluded to some other information, so I'm curious, but happy to leave it at that if y'all are happy.
No, I was kidding with the other information. I think if you zoom out for a second, you look at the state of the protocol. It's one of the few incredibly profitable protocols in the crypto space. A very, very large number of protocols that offer similar services or that are in adjacent businesses operate at enormous losses and are basically funding their growth through hugely deficitary liquidity mining incentives and share dilution. I think we're probably in a reasonable place, but this should maybe stress the importance of expanding to where the demand is, right, and to continue building on that momentum, to not let it slide.
Adrian, do you see the incentives from other projects who are, loss leading, slowing down? And if so, like, do you see them slowing down over the next year, over the next 5 years? And I'm curious, like, how long can loss leading really be sustained by a lot of our, I don't want to say competitors, because they're not necessarily direct competitors, but like other protocols?
It's a good question. We can look into it in more detail. I don't have any hard data at the moment. I mean, obviously, Aave has a program where it's feeding staked Aave to holders. We're beneficiaries a little bit. It's hard to tell. I mean, it's obviously not sustainable in the short run, but I think the strategy there is to basically buy as much cheap demand as possible and then hope that it sticks. But this is a very competitive business and yields rule the game. So I don't know to what extent these protocols will be able to hold on to their customers once the spigot turns off.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for your view, Adrian. Yeah, it's something that I noticed. Demand is not sticky at all in this industry. It's all numbers.
Yeah, but it's not sustainable. But let's take a better example of incentives and how it's not sustainable. We all know it's Anchor and Terra and the UST model. What happens when they run out of money? They just raise funds, and they are supported by various VCs that put millions of money, and they are using that again to for incentives and rewards. So I don't know, when VCs will stop doing this because it's a bet. Like it's an interesting bet because you're just like paying for usage and hoping that at some point, without those incentives, your protocol will remain. That's something we have to wait and see if it's going to happen. But for now, I think these VCs are like just like betting, and they are putting money and see what happens.
Yeah, and sorry, just to circle back to David's question, we had researched this a little bit at the end of last year. And at that time, Compound had spent almost 400 million in liquidity mining incentives. And Aave had spent around 150 million from last year. So, you know, at that scale, neither of those protocols are anywhere close to profitability. Some protocols like to not include dilution as a cost, but that is going to be further from the truth. Dilution is a cost, and that's why, you know, in our financial reporting we do reflect, you know, non-DAI compensation, aka maker compensation, as a real expense.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions about the April financials before we move on?
Yeah, hey, Nadia, circling back to Nadia, getting off the decentralized finance world, what are some of the obstacles you guys are facing with regards to centralized partnerships? Is it the same thing where there's no liquidity, there's no incentives? Like what's stopping DAI from being listed in circles and push to create this POS, these machines that accept USDC at the local shop? Can you give us an idea on that, if possible?
Yeah, of course. Actually, like I talked with Mariano a lot about this, and we have to be conscious that DAI is awesome, but it's not the best stablecoin, because for stablecoins, at least for now, again, and I think that like me living in Argentina, I understand the benefits and how important decentralization is, but that doesn't happen in all the world. What is important is liquidity and how easy you can convert the stablecoin to fiat, and also what people are looking for. So if you think about liquidity and how easy it is to convert a stablecoin into fiat, you will think about USDT and USDC. And also with the like right now we are talking with a company, an OTC, that is selling crypto to banks so they can offer stable coins to their users. And they and also their OTCs, like at some moments they can buy these stable coins at a discount. And that doesn't happen with DAI. On the contrary, because of liquidity, if they want to buy like huge amounts of DAI, they won't get a discount. It will be more expensive because of liquidity. So we have that big issue there, liquidity. In terms of payments, like one thing is the like crypto market, and the other one is like the traditional financial system, and payments really need like a lot of liquidity. So if we want to be included on a POS and companies to use DAI, we have to increase DAI liquidity. That's point number one. On the other side, you also have to think about what users are looking for. And right now they are looking USDC because it's easy to use, and UST because of the yield, because everybody knows that they can get a 20% or 19 or 18, I don't know. And then they can convert that UST to USDC and get dollars. So that's what people are looking for, liquidity or rewards.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate those thoughts and the question. One final call before we move on here. Do you see paper asking in the chat if any cards we're partnered with so people can spend like a Visa card? I guess like
Yes.
Nexo
Yes, we have.
comes to mind, but there might be more.
Yes, we have, but yes, mostly crypto cards. We have various partners that integrated by, yeah, but crypto cards. It's different to integrate with, I don't know, PayPal. That's another story.
Awesome, thank you. All right, let's move on to our discussion segment then. Time here, got 50 minutes and a few different things to cover. So Cadence is going to be leading this overall segment.
Peyton, I think you're cutting in and out a little bit. Can you repeat what you just said?
Huh? That's never good. Sorry, I said I believe that Thomas is going to be leading this segment, so I was trying to hand the mic over to him.
All right. Thank you, Peyton. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Flitter, Engagement Lead for the GovComms core unit, and I'm here to discuss today on some really good pertinent topics. We've got three of them that, 4 of them we'd like to talk about, and those will get started here with just cadence change. So next slide, we take a look here. This is an interesting new improvement proposal we want to look at here. And we'll also want to bring in Derek. I believe Derek has just posted on the forum about this information, and wanted him to have an opportunity. Derek from PE, or I believe he is on board here. I want to give him an opportunity to talk about this.
Cool, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, hey everyone, Derek from PE. So yeah, you may or may not have seen the forum post that we put up recently. This is, as Artem and Pros mentioned earlier, changing the cadence of executives, so moving them from Fridays to Wednesdays. This is a good move for the engineering teams because it gives us a little bit more time between the polling, between when polling starts, ends, and the executive being posted, now not on the Friday, but on the Wednesday. So as part of this change, we are going to continue having the spell cadence be weekly, and we'll assess that as we go. And likewise, if there's emergencies or things that come up, PE will step in to make the process as quick as possible when required. So what I want to do in this little section is just walk us through the current or old process, just give a bit of background as to why we are facing some of the challenges, and then talk about the new process and sort of break it down in a little bit more detail. So yeah, on this side with the old process, we can see when the polls start, when they end. We're all familiar with this, nothing new here. Spell copy gets provided. We put it into a girly spell, which gets reviewed, and then the executive is deployed. So you can see this Thursday to Friday space is really crammed. Like, we're trying to do so much stuff here. We're trying to get CES stuff into the spell. We're trying to look at payments from delegates, core units, rate changes, all of that done in a 24-hour period. So it's kind of risky, and we're doing this on a Friday. It's bad practice. So we'll talk about some of the reasons why this is bad, but essentially that's what we're using today. And then the pitfalls of this are essentially, yeah, it doesn't give us enough time to do the girly spell first. We actually end up kind of doing the girly spell and the mainnet spell at the same time, which is not best practice. So we should really be splitting those two out, making sure that we have the first deployment, we test it, we review it, then we move into mainnet. So that's where the new process is going to give us a lot more focus and opportunity to make sure everything is done correctly. There's also last minute changes to the spell copy. Sometimes, we have delegate payments, addresses, multi-sigs that need to get added at the last moment. So it can be a bit of a challenge in the current process. And again, that really talks to this 24 hours just not being enough. And then there's the more industry-wide, releasing on a Friday is not good practice. If anyone in any other engineering organization were, to be doing this, it's pretty well known that that's a bad move. And it's also unfair to our European, Middle Eastern time zones who are kind of already getting into their weekend at this time. So something we need to be mindful of as well. And the last point here is, so reviewing and accepting PRs from other engineering teams, in this case CES, they're getting involved in the collateral onboarding, so making sure that they have enough time to sync with oracles and with us to do reviews and get the PRs into the final deployment. So that moves us on to what the new process looks like. And so walking us through this, much like we have today, right? Polls start on a Monday, they end on a Thursday. What's changing is that the GovAlpha will be able to hand the spell copy over to protocol engineering on the Friday. And in parallel with that, CES and protocol engineering and others will be working on the Goerli spell during the week, so that by the end of the week, we've got the Goerli spell review ready to be managed and deployed on the Monday, where we then write the main net spell, we deploy it, and it's visible on the portal on Wednesday. Now, we had some debate whether we should be putting it on the portal Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, but we settled on Wednesday morning because it gives us enough time to mention the executive on the Thursday GNR call that we have now, and it seems to give us a good flow in terms of being able to sync with TechOps, with oracles, and other units other core units that need to review it. So I think this flow works well. We're going with it this week. So we'll recall Artem and Pros mentioning that we will not be having an executive this week. We'll be having it on Wednesday next week. So that's the delegate payments, routes BTC, B, and there's one more in there which I'm forgetting isn't there, Pros, but I'm sure you guys mentioned it before. So yeah, that sums up the new process. Oh, there was the stability fee reduction. Yes, how could I forget? Okay, cool. They're the three things. Okay, so that's essentially the process. The next slide talks about more or less what I mentioned for that flow happening. I'm not going to talk through all this. I think you get the main point, and the next slide just refers to the takeaway. So keep in mind, governance spells not on the Fridays, they'll now be on Wednesdays. We're still working to the week-to-week cadence. If there's any overlap or pressure to that, we'll communicate that, and we're happy to have that discussion with the community. And then just reiterating there that the next executive will be on the Wednesday, not Friday the 6th. So hopefully that sums it up. This has been something that's been in discussion for a while. It just takes a bit of effort to get all the different stakeholders aligned and make sure that we all, are all on the same page in terms of the handover from polls to the copy to the executive to testnet, mainnet, and so on. So hopefully this fits with everyone. I've got the forum post in the forum, so any questions, concerns. One consideration that is worth bringing up here is that office hours is one thing that we have discussed and have taken into consideration when doing this plan, that of course there's a delay there, so it could run into the weekend, similar to what we have now, which may delay the lifting of the spell of the hat. So there could be some timing to be aware of there, but otherwise it's as we've stated here. So yeah, any questions? Happy to answer or hand it back to you, Thomas.
All right, thank you, Derek. Just wanted to take a second here and say that see if anybody has any additional comments or feedback. Thank you, Derek, for your information. All right. Well, again, don't forget to visit the forum post that Derek has just put out there, I believe, yesterday. And we look forward to the next developments on that. Thank you. Our next topic we want to talk about is RFPs, requests for proposals. And one of the things that we want to ask, this is a very general open question, is should we have RFPs? And I think we've got through the maker, requisition process, it's something we want to take into consideration, to take a look at. We want to open the floor up to everyone here to ask your thoughts on RFPs. Is this something that we should have? And if so, give us your thoughts and feedback. Just wanted to get folks' ideas. And David, I think you had another comment that you wanted to add to this as well.
Yeah, sure. So by the way, can you guys hear me? Sorry. Okay, yeah. So one benefit of RFPs is that whoever is writing them gets to specify exactly the requirements for the level of service that we're asking for, right? So, in the example of content production or a marketing team, right now there's no clear recipe of services and everything that we want in a marketing team. And so anybody who's coming from the external world, proposing their own team, will propose their own vision of what they think we need. But the RFP as a tool for the DAO will enable the DAO to really communicate what it needs upfront. And also it creates a clear call to action to the public saying, hey, this is something we need. Here's like a window that we are opening up for these kinds of proposals. And I think it would be a really great tool to also increase the amount of incoming proposals, not just to specify the actual requirements of like a given thing that maker's hunting for, whether it's a specific core unit, whether it's like a specific special purpose fund, or really anything. And so, yeah, that's kind of just like my brief comments for why I think it would be beneficial to start using this tool essentially.
Okay, thank you, David. And we actually did have a comment in our chat. Long for Wisdom said we kind of do have them in the MIP 13, but no one really uses it for that though. I don't know if he's here, wanted to comment any more about that, or.
Yeah, I can just say what was.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so MIP 13 is the declaration of intent MIP. It defines a sub-process where essentially an author just writes a declaration of intent, which is then voted on. The idea being that like there's some statement that says, for example, something like, in this case, MakerDAO wishes to hire a marketing core unit, right? And then the contents of that declaration of intent would sort of go through the conditions, right? So saying, we would expect them to have this, do this, cost this, etc. So it's kind of like a general process, which is designed for sort of any. Apologies.
I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt you, sir, but someone's asking to speak up a little bit. They couldn't hear you. I wanted to hear everything. So.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, so this is sort of a general process for any sort of declaration of intent, right? Like anything that we would want to do or want to happen, but don't actually are not able to implement right now, like just by putting it in a MIP, right? Is kind of what this is designed for. And like request for proposals is kind of a subcategory of something we want to express, like an intention we want to express that we can't make happen just by voting for it, right?
I think the main difference though is that, requests for proposals create a call to action, whereas declarations of intent, I think historically have been used by applicants who want to test the water for their own proposal before they actually propose it. So if you look at the examples of the different people who use the declaration of intent, it's usually them explaining what they're going to do, not the DAO explaining what the DAO wants or needs. Though I think there's some examples of both. I have to double check that.
Yeah, so that was kind of what I was saying. It hasn't really been used for that much in the past, but there's no real reason it can't be, right? It was more designed for that purpose than it was for applicants to say to sort of test the waters for their thing, right?
Yeah, I'm just curious everyone's thoughts on, if something like an RFP goes in process, who would follow through, who would handle the RFP? Would that be the individual core units, or how would that look if that was something that we?
I mean, I think it would fall under a category of what I think delegates can author, because delegates kind of have the higher view of like the organization, what we might need. Like, yeah, maybe growth can do an RFP for a brand team. Maybe we could do an RFP for something else that's related. But I see this mainly as I don't know. I think this is a great tool for delegates to use to really push forward initiatives and needs.
Okay. Are there any delegates online that would like to speak on this or share your thoughts? All right.
So
yeah, I'll take it. Oh, go.
I'm pretty new, and for me, like the proposals are kind of daunting because the level of effort that goes into them is really high. And of course there's Discord, but to have like a format that's a little bit less formal, I would appreciate that.
All right, thank you. I've got Tim and Tim both have their hands raised. Shupi, I'll take you first. Tim, I'll take you second. Go ahead, please.
I mean, I think the general way of doing that was possible before, but I think having some kind of more formalized way of doing that, and actually encouraging even some kind of ideation or in the end applications for work that people are going to do, that's a good idea, I think. I think it's not too much that it hasn't been possible before. It has been possible before, but yeah, investing some time of formalizing this stuff, bringing it into a shape that it's an easy funnel for people to actually pitch ideas. I think that's a good idea.
All right, thank you. Tim, you had your hand, Tim Black, you had your hand raised there?
Yeah, +1 to that. Okay. But, to Long's point and to the governance processes we already have with the SPF, application for funds, it sounds to me like if we zoom out and say, all right, well, what problem does a request for proposal solve? It solves two things: outlining work that we know we want to get done, and setting some sort of structure to it that we just don't have the bandwidth for, right? And so to me, that sounds like the RFP thing that we're requesting or having this open call for right now is an opportunity to have work that we want to prioritize in the DAO that people apply to. I think of compound grants as a sort of example of this. There's plenty of other history and like open source work that has requests for proposals. And so I think there's a happy medium where we can use the tools we have right now in the MIPs themselves and construct a framework that may be like native to the forum, or it lives in some other place. And then that way we don't have to have it be as formal, and it can ideate on ideas and eventually result in MIPs. So that's sort of my 2 cents on that topic.
Actually, oh, sorry. So because of what Tim said, we are sponsoring Hack Money, and we needed like a couple of ideas for the wish list of what we want the builders to build. Because in the past, when we sponsored these hackathons, everyone was just integrating DAI as any other stablecoin. So that's not something we wanted to. So we decided to like create this wish list, and actually I shared a form with other core units. I'm going to share it right here because we want to like create a grants page, what Tim said. So with all the things that Maker wants to get to have in the future. So I just shared the link in the chat. If you have an idea and want to include your idea in this wish list, we will publish that, and we will like ask hackers during hackathons and on the Twitter account to build what's in there. So yeah, just send us your ideas.
Thank you, Nadia. Appreciate your comments, and the chat is really getting going here. So just trying to capture, there was comments and so forth. But thank you all for your comments. I want to open the floor. Anyone else have any other thoughts or comments on this? This is really, really good chat right now. Okay. Great. I think we've got put down a few notes on this. And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to move on to our next topic. And this next topic is a prioritization voting framework. And I'm going to hand this off to Peyton. Peyton?
Yeah, thank you. I know I was cutting in and out a little bit, so wave at me or do something if that happens again. And I don't know, panic internally about it. Thanks, Lon. So prioritization voting framework. This is something that's on GovAlpha's kind of roadmap for this quarter, and something that me and the team have been working on a lot this past little bit. And we kind of wanted to announce it today with the idea that an upcoming forum post will be taking place with further details. Cool. If you don't mind going to the next slide, Thomas.
Okay. David, I think you got, there we go.
Oh, David, yeah, sorry about that. So the motivation behind this is that right now it's much easier to pass things than it is to implement them, right? I ended up making a list of all the collateral types, kind of general things that governments had pulled on and approved, and it was at nearly 100 items that have been voted on, but we haven't fully implemented yet. So the problem's pretty clear that, you know, right now the mechanism governance has is to pass things they want. And then core units have this long list of past things. They say, well, our mandate points over to this. So we're going to keep working on these things, and as more come in, we'll try to shuffle them into our priority. Core units on their end have many ways of conveying their priority, right? Like they can add updates, they can hop on calls like this, they can host ad hoc calls, and also just the things that they do also convey their own priority. But in terms of delegates and MKR holders and voters, currently they don't really have a way to express what they would like to see prioritized from the DAO. So as of now, it's kind of like people will say, you know, I think we should be doing this in chat, and the more people that pile on that, the greater the appearance of prioritization is. But it is completely detached from like MKR voting. So what we really need is a continuous method to be able to see what MKR holders and the delegates believe the DAO as a whole should be really putting their effort behind. Yeah, and kind of as a side note there before we go on is that obviously core unit internal mandates, they propose like, hey, these are the things we're going to work on, but we also spend a lot of time collaborating and working on things with other core units. So, you know, in particular, that's something that could really be optimized by having a prioritization framework, by saying, hey, MKR holders want this to happen. So if I'm going to spend time coordinating and trying to work on things with other CUs that are their own independent bodies, like it makes sense to at least have a list, at least have something that says MKR holders actually want this. Cool. So if we could go to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about what this model will actually look like. So our vision is to have a month-long IRV format, which is ranked choice voting structure. This will consist of a main prioritization poll, and then polls with subcategories when needed. So the idea being here that delegates and MKR voters can submit their ranked choice for things that they think should be prioritized in the order that they think they should be prioritized in. It would be hosted on the voting portal, and we've gotten in contact with Data Insights to be able to provide some visualizations for us in terms of how the actual voting goes. And that's because ranked choice is designed to kind of display the winner, right? Like it's designed to come out with the single victor, but actually being able to see what people's ranked choices were and how those decisions between ranking something, say, 4th and 6th compared to flipping the two. That's essentially why we want to have Data Insights providing a deeper insight as to how the vote is going. Cool. I'll have you switch in the next slide, as I think that mostly hits those three. From there, we would use a weekly update from GovAlpha. This is to like summarize the information, remind delegates and other MKR holders how the vote is going. Again, the idea being that this is a continuous over a month-long process. So as people change their votes or as new voters come in, the overall priority would be seen as changing. And again, the idea in terms of the main poll with subcategories is there are going to be some prioritization items that kind of require a list of priority within their own. For instance, in this first go round, we're going to be having basically protocol engineering, technical design as a subcategory, and then collateral as another one, because it wouldn't make sense to kind of include all the individual collaterals or all the individual modules in that entire ranking. But basically having MKR voters and delegates be able to say, all right, well, I think adding new collaterals should be towards the top. I think that should be like the third most important thing. And then rank what collaterals they would like to see from that. Provides a lot of information for the core unit to work. Then the final component of this would be like a monthly relegation process, basically taking the bottom three options that were least prioritized and having new ones come in their place. Again, this is to kind of keep the list living and going with new topics from different stakeholders. So we would have one distilled from the core units, one distilled from the recognized delegates, and then one from the general community. Cool. I know that's like kind of a lot of information to throw at you, but the kind of final points I wanted to hammer home is like, this would not be a binding poll, like it'd be continuous. And the idea is instead to kind of get the dialogue going and say, all right, well, MKR holders think this is important. So now core units can respond to that, can say, all right, well, we hear you and we're taking this action because of that. Or, you know, our resources are committed over here. So even while we saw you wanted to prioritize this, until this is done, we won't be able to do so. So hopefully the idea is this will really increase communication, allow MKR holders a way to say what they think is important in terms of coordination between the core units. And finally, for the core units themselves, give them a tool to see in real time, like what people with actual voting weight really think is important, rather than just people commenting, whether it's in Discord or the forums. Cool. Seeing a few chats come through, so I'm scrolling through this now. If phone has a question, they can hop on the mic and I'm happy to answer it as well.
So Lamata was asking whether priorities would change every week, and which is an interesting question. So we kind of see these as like communications from governance to core units, right? So governance might change their minds about what their priorities are every week. I suspect they won't, but they might. But like that's separate from like core units, like actual like working priorities, right? Like the point is that, or the idea for this is that core units will still set their working priorities, but they now have more information with which to do so. Like sort of quantifiable information from governance, which they can feed into their prioritization process, right? So I don't expect core units to change their priorities every week if like governance changes theirs every week, right? Because that's kind of not feasible. But yeah, they can at least look at that and say like, well, you know, yes, we'll move on to this next, but we're currently doing this, so we can't sort of move on to it right now, right?
And I think just to add to that, the idea of really being significant, right? So like priorities may shift, but if they shift like in a small amount, like, I don't know, that's a less strong signal. But if all of a sudden, I don't know, some major world event happens and all the MKR starts going to a single option, that might be a good signal for the core units to take a step back and reassess their roadmap. David, go for it.
Yeah, David's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I think another advantage is that this would create like a very clear communication about disparity of expectations. So like if core units think something should be prioritized in a different way than the people voting on this poll, then that creates like a very clear thing that needs to be talked about, right? So if, like let's say layer 2 multi-chain is more important than more collateral on L1, that would be like something to reconcile around. And so I think this would be pretty good to sync the MKR voters and delegates with the actual workforce that's executing on all these desires.
All right, thank you, David. Got a couple of other comments in the chat, and one was about prioritization at a macro level. Is that something? If it gets into the lower levels, it could be disruptive. That was from Robert. Did you?
Yeah, that was me. And I think it's super helpful that we're doing work on prioritization to set direction. What can get a little challenging sometimes is if we get into the actual details and it becomes more of a micromanagement function. And just want to keep that in mind, because we develop backlogs and have plans and cadences and sprints and flows and everything. It's not as if we don't want to consider something new. Chances are, if something gets posted, there's probably been some work somewhere done on that. And sure, it's an opportunity to explain that. But if we can, like, for example, things that are helpful for our core unit is to understand general categories of collateral that the community thinks is important. So one example, obviously, are all of the ETH and sub-ETH variants that we're going after. Absolutely, right? So to know that that's still a continued high priority for the community makes a lot of sense, right? Obviously, RWAs, another example. So just a comment to keep it at a, again, more macro level, to give us better direction so we can come together when we do our work as core units and know that we're tracking together.
All right, thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Wanted to just hear back from anybody else on this topic before we move on to the next one. Any additional comments?
I think, Thomas, I'll just add that yeah, I'm all for getting a better view from people having this continuously available. One thing that came to mind is, as you and Pros were talking, was what Dux have done. They have a board that allows people to upvote, downvote ideas, and I like that. From, hey, let's have a quick look, see what people are interested in. Cool, let's get it into a sprint. Or, oh wait, that is a resource request that is currently involved in an audit or some high priority work, and we can't do it. So having the conversation around those individual line items, I think is fine. I think it's something that the facilitators would be the main sort of leads to. It wouldn't be a distraction to the team. So yeah, I like it. It'd be interesting to see what sort of tooling you guys are thinking of here. So yeah, I see 𝘬𝘬 has his hand up. I hand it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't think this is the same. This would be the same tool we're talking about, Derek, because a feature request board basically works on a much lower level, right? And I do think the discussion about, is it high level, is it low level, is it micromanagement, that's just very relevant. So you need to get it right and get the right signal at the right level. And that's why I said that I would probably prefer to call this sentiment polling, because if there are only 12 topics on the list, and it would be for the entirety of MakerDAO, right?
Yes.
So it's extremely unlikely that there's going to be a feature on there saying we want tags on the governance portal or something, right?
No. So maybe I can clarify this a little bit, because like our current plan is to try and, so our kind of considerations for this is that like we can't have polls with sort of like 20, 30, 50 options on, right? It's just not tenable for delegates or anyone to vote on them. So 12 is kind of what we feel like the upper limit is. But the way we're sort of hoping to be able to express the maximum possible signal from polls with only 12 options is by having the poll's kind of organized around so the poll's organized around like the mutual exclusive like resource requirements of things, right? So we might, for example, have like a poll which is like smart contract resource, you know, and that might have something in it which is like, you know, I guess 𝘰𝘯𝘓 is a good example, seeing as that's come up, right? This is 𝘰𝘯𝘓. It might have like collateral support as a general item, and it might have like a handful of other things that PE could be doing. The idea then would be if, for example, collateral support is like the top level item, you would also have like a poll happening in parallel, which is like, you know, which like on-chain collaterals do you want to prioritize, right? So from that, you sort of have this system where you have, you know, multiple polls with 12 options that sort of combine to provide a more useful signal without having to have like one giant poll which has 100 options, which is like everything MakerDAO could possibly be doing at any time. So in the kind of same way you could do this with, so the actual level, so you asked about like macro or micro level as well, which is a good question. Not 100% sure what makes most sense with this, right? My kind of gut feeling was that we would want it on like I guess deliverable level, right? So stuff like 𝘰𝘯𝘓, like onboarding a collateral, doing X or doing Y. In the future, I'd kind of like to have like actual like DAO direction stuff in some poll like this as well, right? So we have an item which is sort of, you know, green money, for example, or like you know, any one of the other like major like sort of high level objectives we could take. But that's probably a bad place to start for like a trialing a new thing. So that's kind of why we're starting on stuff that's a little bit more concrete, I guess. Sorry, I talked a fair bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and the point is that so you can't make it too specific, otherwise you run back into like strategy questions, right? Some combinations of priorities just don't make sense. If the top 3 is I'll build the car's engine and fix the bike's brakes, then the one is about building a car, the other is about building a bike. You need to agree first whether you want to build a car or a bike. So it has to be very high level, as indeed a sentiment poll that just shows the general sentiment of MKR holders are they're trending in the direction of, you know, thinking that MKR tokenomics reform is getting more and more important, or we really have to push with real assets now, or we really have to push in another direction now. So on that level, I think it's probably useful. Once it gets more detailed, I think you run into all kinds of problems, and it's probably not the right tool, in my opinion, at least.
All right. Well, thank you. A lot of great conversation and thoughts and feedback. Anyone else have? We've still got some good chat going on. Wanted to see if anybody else wanted to have a return. Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like this will certainly have some future conversations and more to come. So thank you all for your great comments on this. I'd like to, we've got about, I guess, about what, 10 minutes left or so. I'd like to see what our next topic was here, and the last topic here today, discussion section, is how to improve on follow through. Well, we go through ideas, and they get generated and through the forum and through various channels, and sometimes they kind of fall to the wayside, or they don't get pushed through. And wanted to ask the question, how do we know if an idea will move forward or not? This is an open question, and it is a very general question, but it's just something for us to think about. Is, you know, the follow through, is it a bandwidth issue? Is it a resource issue? responsibility issue to take the ball and run with it, but wanted to ask the question about example like liquidity, or what would be something, give an example, maybe some things that we could improve on as we take an idea to try to take it to the next level, to the next step. And I want to open it up conversation and comments for the entire group here today to see what your thoughts were.
I think there's like a way that we could divide this. Like a part of it is that there are things that, the entire DAO pretty much agrees like that this needs to happen. And so it goes on our list of like of things that we want, but then it's like a resource issue. It's like, okay, like where is it? Well, in reality, it might take 6 months to a year to build, or more, or less. So that's one thing. There's like, things that we want that everybody agrees on, but then there's things that we want that there's a lot of disagreement about. For example, the burn. For example, prioritizing tokenomics, or for example, DAI liquidity with 𝘠𝘠𝘠𝘠. And so like I noticed that proposals that have a lot of like disagreement and controversy, that they tend to they tend to stagnate and pretty much die. So that's I think I'm curious how to deal with working through things that we want that might be surrounded by a lot of disagreement.
All right, thank you, David. Yeah, we had a couple of comments here. It was Derek actually, he asked, talking about aligning strategy, and that's Derek. Did you want to add to that? I think that's a good question.
Well, just a question. I mean, David, all the things you mentioned there that and 𝘠𝘪𝘴 earlier, tokenomics, burn, by all of these different angles. It seems like there's a lot of this discussion happening in the forum, and it seems like you were getting at we're not quite sure which direction to go in because of the diversity of questions and discussion out there. So there was a comment yesterday, I think, in the DSS Kiln discussion forum post there, where someone said have a focus group targeting some of this. I think that's a good idea. I know there's the resilience that SES is starting to get ramped up on in terms of asking questions and taking a question, the whole strategy question forward there. Maybe that's a solution. How do we be quick about doing that? I think is all part of this. But yeah, so I guess that's about it. But Acre Invest, I see you got your hand up. Hand it over to you.
That's 𝘰𝘭𝑠.
Hi, everyone. I was just looking for this blog, the forum post. I think it was about intangibles. I just wanted to ask about the human side. So we're all humans here, and we talk a lot about the business. We're strictly business. And yeah, I want to ask if there's more we can do as a community to discuss how we feel, how we're feeling.
That's great.
And if some of our challenges we talk through have some personal dynamics. And if there's something we could do to improve our connections to one another on a human level and see one another more fully, and how we can't get together always often, but I know I'm in some DAO communities that are really tackling this, and I think I put some comments in that thread, and I think MakerDAO could really benefit from that conversation happening in concert with some of our strategic work. And yeah, it's tough at times in the world, and we're all under lots of pressure. And I know everyone here works super hard and very smart and really driven. It's impressive. And I think that's one, if there's anything I feel is a potential risk for our success, I actually think it's that. It's more like how we are doing as human beings and our capacity to continue to coordinate and work together, because it's got to be more than the money. It's got to be more than number go up. I mean, you know, we really need, I think, to spend some time thinking about the interpersonal dynamics of doing this work and how everyone's actually doing. I just wanted to raise that. I'm softy in the group.
No, that's a very good point. That is a very good point. Sometimes we get lost in not focusing in on obviously the interpersonal necessarily. So thank you for that. That's a great comment. And David has now got his hand up. David, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, sure. I think, again, there's two levels to this. I think one of them is like within the CU itself. Like, so something that we do at GovComms during each of our stand-ups is we have kind of like an open-ended question of like, hey, how's morale? How are you doing? And like myself as the facilitator, like I make sure that my team, you know, schedules time off. Like it doesn't work 60, 70-hour weeks if they don't have to, you know, get support they need. So there's, you know, it's the facilitator's role to really like steward the team's morale. But then there's this other piece where it's like cross-core unit bonding. Like how do we get more cross-core unit bonding going? And this is something that, yeah, it's an interesting challenge. Offsites help, seeing people in person helps, these calls even help. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that kind of dualism, I guess.
All right, thank you, David. Appreciate that. I think we got another hand raised over here, Chris.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of like different answers to this, like David had mentioned. But in my experience through life, the cheat code to this, it's not a pretty one, but it's pretty much you've got to go through hell together. Like whatever group you're with, you know, and maybe this answers part of the like larger question about follow through and you know, people possibly forming like subcommittees to do stuff. But in my experience, strong bonds are forged through extreme adversity. So the more we do that as our own CUs, the more we do that across core units with each other, tackle hard problems and quite frankly go through hell together, the stronger those bonds are going to get. It's not pretty, but the end result's pretty amazing.
Right. No, thank you for that comment. That's great. Yes, hand raised, Rafi.
Yeah, I would just want to applaud 𝘧𝘰𝘳 for raising that. I think it's a very important aspect, and it kind of gets pushed to the side because it's not clean and not measurable. And I think it's vitally important, and I would love to have a ongoing discussion on that. I think I just want to applaud you for bringing that up.
Great, thank you for your comment. I appreciate that. I know that we're getting close to end of our time today, and I think this is a really good, interesting topic. Could be an ongoing topic to talk about the human element and the relationship building that we have, not only our business needs, but for just our interpersonal building, which is great. So Peyton, thank you it was a great discussion. I'm gonna hand it back off to you. Thanks.
All right, I really appreciate you facilitating the discussion segment there, Thomas. Nice to have you on the mic and on the camera for the call.
Thank you.
So yeah, noting the time here, we don't have much time for open discussion, but I do want to give one final call if there was anything urgent someone wanted to get on the call here before we wind down. All right, well, thank you all for sharing. Went over a lot of stuff today, so do check the forums. We'll keep the discussion going there as well as in the chat. But yeah, thank you. We'll be around same time, same place next week. And thanks so much for attending. Bye now.